Oh, yeah, I told you. I like your face. So.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Alrighty, you guys, I think I'm going to start. I'm Jersey Ross. I'm the moderator of this fabulous ConTessa panel that you are all going to be able to ask questions of these fabulous panelists and learn all about designing, playing, and teaching kids to play RPGs with you and for each other, and it's going to be fabulous. So without further ado, so let me tell you a little bit about the format. So we're going to hit a couple sort of topics that we've heard people asking a lot about this, and so they're kind of from the description. And then at the halfway mark, I'm going to, hopefully, we will have gotten through them, and it'll be great, and then I'll move to sort of some of your questions. And if you don't have any more, I have tons of questions, because I just found out that I'm going to be in charge of running a kids group at a local middle school, so you're training me, so thank you. So ask all the good questions that I wouldn't even think to ask, please. Yeah, and so thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Hello. So if you're all good, I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we're going to dive right into this. So we have on my right James August Walls. He's fabulous. You might know him from I Live for Crits, his amazing YouTube channel, which you should definitely look at. It is also a website, livingforcrits.com. Check it out. His wife Jennifer and daughters Carrie and Evie are gamers and GMs themselves. His son Cooper, 6, has been RPGing since he was 4. So you've got a lot of experience with this. Together with the help of the family, they founded the Norwin Game Nights, a local Pittsburgh gaming club. So lots of things to be able to ask him. Let that percolate for the questions. On his right is the amazing, the incomparable, no other GM has co-GM'd with me like that. It is Carrie Walls. She is so great. Please give her a round of applause. Thank you. She's an RPG player. She is a GM. She is an artist. And she has done her own RPG art. She's so fabulous. She plays Numenera, Savage Worlds, Dungeon Crawl Classics. She is a devious Dungeon Crawl Classics game master. She's been playing RPGs since she was 5. She's been GMing since 2014, and on Thursday she was my fabulous co-GM for a table full of adults at the big ConTessa game night, and she did so well. She had great voices. I'll talk about it later because I have too much to gush about. And tomorrow she will be co-GMing with her father, Savage Worlds game, so she's someone to keep an eye out for. Yay. Carrie's great. And Shanna, we get to Shanna Germain. She is from Monty Cook Games, the lead designer of No Thank You Evil, which just won a Gold Emmy Award last night for the best family game. A couple of other Emmys for best production values for Numenera, so they're great people to keep an eye on and are fabulous human beings. I think that covers it, right? Cool. So John Harness, he is the one, the only. He has personality leaking out of his ears. He is also an artist and an arts educator who runs a weekly after-school RPG club in Hyde Park, Chicago for 9 to 12-year-olds. And he is the founder and moderator of the RPGs for Kids Facebook page, which you should check out because it's pretty active and got really great advice and resources that are shared there. So thank you so much. And then also an Emmy Award dominating Lynne Hardy. She's so.
I'm not with Belgrade. They dominated last night.
You could if you wanted to. They let you. So Lynne Hardy has her fingers in many pots. She's a freelance author and editor with many titles to her name. She's worked with Modifius Entertainment on Achtung Cthulhu, which picked up at least one Emmy last night for best cover.
Silver for best cover. 3 years running now, actually.
Awesome.
Silver for best cover.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. And she also is the designer of the Tea Time Steampunk Pulp Action Adventure RPG, Cogs, Cakes, and Sword Sticks, which, as I recall, was sort of, you said was, at least in an interview that I read, so I'll grill you on this later, but was intended to be really accessible to new people, especially people who are interested in steampunk, which are clearly great nerds to come seize and play games with us. And it seems really friendly to a lot of different ages, so hopefully we'll be able to get into that. Awesome. These are our panelists. Please give a round of applause. They're awesome. So I feel like when I ask a lot of people questions about, and when I've seen like a rash of articles online about, how do we GM with kids, how do we play RPGs with kids, and you seem to get really different advice, and then you clarify, and they're like, oh, for these ages. And so there seems to be some differences in the types of advice you would give. So I was wondering if you guys could clarify or talk a little bit about like how do you see age interacting with like kids in RPGs. So I thought we might be able to like talk to let's see, I was thinking like how does it react for designing games with our two game designers, GMing for kid players, like how do you approach it when you're GMing for kids, so John and James, and then training kids, so James and Carrie. But see if that suits you, or just give us your opinions, because I think it's a really fraught question. If you could help us break it down, that'd be great.
So where do you want us to start, Darcy?
Sorry, why don't we start with design? Our designers, at least.
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, I tend to think less in ages and more in sort of mental spaces. And so there's sort of the mental space where it's very tactile, and reading is still kind of a chore and a struggle, and math is still kind of a chore and a struggle. And then there's sort of another mental space where those things are becoming interesting, less of a struggle, but sort of part of being sort of grown-up player in that way. And then there's kind of another level where those things are captured and they're easy, and there's a movement toward other skills. So I kind of think of it in those groups rather than in ages, because I think that the age ranges are they're helpful, but they're also kind of they can put the wrong constraints on a player. If a player is like, no, I know how to read. What are you talking about? And so I feel like for me, my goal is to feel out each player a little bit, not just in terms of what their skill set is, but what their interest is. Like they may be a great reader, but they don't necessarily want to read at the table. They want to interact, or they want to spell things out, or they want to jump up and down instead. And so for me, it's all about like what captivates you and keeps you at the table, and where is your mental space more than your age a little bit.
Cool. That's really helpful. Lynne, do you have some thoughts?
I was incredibly surprised when Cogs was nominated for Best Family Game for the Ennies a couple of years ago, because I will admit it wasn't actually designed originally as a family game, but it was designed to be accessible to people who'd never gamed before, so kind of by accident it became that too. And my ethos for that was to make it as simple and as straightforward with the minimum amount of stuff that you needed, because a lot of games do need a lot of stuff. And to keep it small and fast and flexible, and to stimulate people's imagination so that they were really contributing to the story, so that they were leading it, and that the GM was really just there to facilitate them letting their imagination run absolutely riot. Obviously with the steampunk ones, we've at Steampunks in Space at the Leicester Space Museum last year, we had an entire family, from a beautiful little 3-year-old who wanted to be Elsa, all the way up to Gran, create characters as a group together. So her brother was basically Superman. Well, he was Clark Kent, but nobody knew he was Superman. So we did that. And Dad was Princess Elsa's faithful, loyal manservant. So Dad helped Elsa create her character. And we questioned her about, what does Elsa do? What's her favourite thing? So her sword stick skill, which was her physical, was dancing. She's such a great dancer, she loves to dance. So that was, sort of teasing that out, to, as you say, talking to them, talking to the children, talking to, anyone, finding out what it is they're interested in and how they want to reflect that.
Oh, very cool, thank you so much. If you guys don't mind, why don't we talk about, how you consider aging when you're aging. If you're aging kids at your table, that's a problem, but why don't we have John and James talk about, they both operated these gaming clubs, and sort of, you've seen a lot of different kids move through this. So how do you consider it?
Well, I when I first came to Gen Con a few years ago, I was interested in the age gap. Since you have like 6 and up, I think 13 and up, and there is actually such a wide group of strata between 6 and 13 that's sort of left out there. And I do look at age a little bit, because parents give me age questions in the club we have, but a 4, 5, and 6-year-old is going to play different from a 8, 7, 8, 9-year-old, and by 10 they can start delving into adult games maybe. So it is different, as Shanna said, for every child, but in general you have like 3 sections in there where you can bring kids in different games, and what we do at our club is typically, you know, the cutoffs are you have your 4, 5, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds in games that are shorter, you know, 30 minutes, maybe sometimes less, you know, depends on the attention span. Especially if you get 4, you're trying to have a 4-year-old table, which is can be daunting, but the right game and the right game master, you know, and some parents' help, it can be done. And then once they're hitting 9 and 10, they're able to do multi-hour sessions sometimes, and then 11 up, they're usually graduating into the. They're not stepping into asking the GM at that point. They're, you know, they're at least playing at a higher level, playing adult games. What's important for us in our club is we don't want to talk down to any kids and treat them like kids. We want to bring them in as gamers and give them the respect. And I think that's something that, you know, we do try to champion is, you know, our children are so much more capable sometimes of what others think they are. And only we as parents know what they're capable of, and we're going to have to be their advocates for that.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you. John?
So he was talking about a gap for 6 to 13-year-olds, and my weekly game is for 9 to 12-year-olds. I think that I agree with what everyone said, that there are, you know, every kid is different, and everyone comes not only as their like age and their educational background, but their learning style and all of those things. But at the same time, I think that there are broadly sort of different concepts for what you want to be doing when you're running a game with kids for different age groups. For example, so I just ran Think of Evil yesterday and had 2 non-reader 5-year-olds for the first time, which was super fun. But of course, it's a little bit more sort of like, what do you think about this? Maybe this is an option. What's a, you know, let's, you know, basically like whatever they focus on, like that's what it's all about. And of course that's like kind of true for any role-playing game, but like super much. Yes, there is a pony. The pony can save the world. I don't, you know, all other logic, yeah. You know? And so that was fun. But for my tweens, you know, an interesting tension is that it's always sort of like, I see my club as like an explicitly educational space. You know, it is meant to be both fun and entertaining, but also we're learning about how to do this. We're learning about the social space, the social contracts of it all, right? And so I find myself doing more like mimicking sort of the expectations I might have of adults, like James was saying, sort of, and leading them through the sort of steps of things like that. So one of the sort of like vectors of learning that happens over the few years I played with the kid is that they go from the space of, oh, you say I have all of the options and I can do anything I want? Well, I want to make a boat out of daggers that I have. I have an infinite number of daggers in my pocket, and therefore I want to make a boat out of that. This is a real example, right? So, like, we're playing Dungeon World right now, so that's not really an ability, but maybe, okay, go for it, you know? But then you have to work and sort of kind of get to where, okay, really, like, we have things in there. And so it becomes an issue of sort of working with the expectations of each kid and finding, like, what tools will work, what things will work to sort of do the task.
Excellent. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
And then, so Carrie, you got drafted into GMing, I hear. So do you want to, so did your dad ask you, like, did he, I heard he kind of shoehorned you into doing it. Like, you don't really have a choice, right?
No, he kind of just said that you should try out being a game master, and I decided, okay, I'll do that. But he kind of pushed me into it, like pushed me, like, you have to do this. This is good. This is a good idea.
Did he like tell you you should be a game master because you're good at storytelling and you're a good player, or how did he like sell it to you? Do you think? What made you confident that you could try it? Just that he was confident in you?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, he always gives me like he always is confident in what I do, and he always tells me that I can do these things. So I mean, I guess the fact that I am a good storyteller according to him, and
our players.
And so the fact that I can write a story real quick and I can mostly keep control of kids and I can and being confident. I think it's
Awesome. And do you have anything to add with, like, you know, so you got her into being a GM, and then you got Evie into being a GM. Do you have any thoughts about, like, you know, did you do it poorly the first time, but it worked out okay? Was she the first pancake? Or do you have any advice, right, about how to pitch it, you know, in a way that makes it comfortable and not too stressful on the
Well,
game master?
when it came to Carrie and Evie, it wasn't whether it was stressful or not for them. My wife and I were running a club by ourselves. We need more game masters. I was hitting a point where I was having 11 to 12 people at a Numenera or a DCC table, and it was getting out of hand. So I was really hoping, because the age groups in the club, I really needed some people to step forward, and I can't force anyone else except for my children until they're out of my house to do it. So
they had to help out with a family farm.
Yeah. The reality really with them is that I can see what all three of my kids are capable of doing, and I know Carrie is so passionate about other types of storytelling, about she calls them her OC, her original characters, original creation that she does. I don't know these terms. I'm 37. I'm getting old. So she's so passionate about these, so I know that she can bring these stories into any game she wanted, and she so far she's doing pretty good at it, I think.
Cool. Thank you guys so much. So, Carrie, you brought up, part of being a GM is not just being a good storyteller, it's that you have real human beings with lots of tiny human brains going off in crazy directions, and you have to manage them all and get them together and don't split the party. So, I wanted to ask the panelists if they had, any advice specific to, managing distractions, managing, sort of emotional conflicts that come up at tables, and how you treat it differently with a table of kids than you would, your friends who will forgive you, and your kid you have to reconcile with. You live with them, right? Your friends you can blow off steam and leave. But and then as a sub question of that, so how do you manage a table with kids? There's a difference between your kids and other people's kids, and so if you could tell me a little bit about that, as I'm going to be jamming for other people's kids, I would love to know. So, and here I'm just going to popcorn. So if you have something you're excited to say, just look me in the eyes real hard, and I'll call it.
So I don't have any kids. Of my own. My day job is I work in a museum, and I'm sort of an art teacher. And so I work with a lot of different age groups and with other people's kids all the time. But I think what I'm learning through running the Facebook group is things like they get dropped off at a comic book store and their parents leave, and I can't send them to bed. So I have to do a hefty dose of we're gonna, by the end of the day, we're gonna all get along, maybe, hopefully, and so I take a pretty strong hand with sort of things like that. I'm very explicit about, the social contract. I'm we are all, no matter what happens, we are all adventurers together, and we are gonna get along. And when a real, just like with adult players, some big strong thing comes up, I'm just and now we are voting, and this is how it works. But not only that, I say, and let's all remember that we're here to play this game together, and because of that, even if we vote in the way that you don't really want, just remember that this is how the story is going to go forward, and we can all get what we want, And it helps if you throw a Benny at the kid who loses the vote, a little bit, just sweeten the pain a little bit. So yeah, I think you have to be pretty swift with it, and I guess it's also that I'm not working for my own. Not being with my own kids, I have a different understanding of them. I'm kind of their friend.
Yeah.
I'm kind of not their friend. They look up to me kind of in a way that I guess is different than parents. I'm not a parent. I don't know, but.
I know sometimes. Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
I know sometimes with other people I know who have gamed a lot with children, who work in museums and do this sort of things a lot as well, is that it can sometimes also be really helpful to get the children to discuss ground rules and to lay their own ground rules, so that they all feel invested in it. They've all had a part of creating that safe atmosphere for everyone to game in. It's not just that an adult is imposing those sort of rules on them, maybe like a parent does, as a parent should do. But it's so that they have a big say in how that then goes forward and what they consider acceptable behaviour from everyone.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
What I was going to say is, and kind of what John was covering there about the social contract and just working with gamers, with young gamers especially. As a parent, I don't want to. With my children, I feel different than other people's children. In some ways, particularly the older kids, I should have the friend bond forming, but I have to. I've snapped back frequently that I am the adult in the room often, and if it goes awry, instances of bullying, which I've seen at my tables, which may not, the kids don't really realize what they're doing, but it is my responsibility, especially if I have someone else's children at my table, to step forward and to intervene. Whether it's making someone step away from the table, which we've had to do occasionally, whether it's telling players that they need to stay out of turn, which we have to go into the game occasionally and deal with that. So I do feel a little more stress with other people's kids, and I often will speak to the parents to make sure that they understand what the social contracts are in the games, so they know if their child has has been asked to step up, they're welcome to come back. But sometimes in that instance, there's maybe just need to be tweaked or changed in behavior. We're the grown-ups. We have to make sure we're protecting everyone at the table from the most. We're friends with the outrageous players. They give us a good time, and they have just a great energy. We also have to make sure we're looking for everyone at the table, make sure everyone's having a good time.
Awesome. Carrie, I wanted to ask you, I was wondering if, and feel free to move up since the air conditioning went on if you can't hear, sorry. I was wondering, so when I'm the adult at the table, I already come with some social authority. Have you found it tricky at all to sort of, be like, no, I'm in charge, I'm the GM, like, we're all friends here, but I have to have final say so that this goes somewhere? I don't know if you've encountered that as trouble or not.
Yeah, I've not really encountered it because it still is only my second year of game.
You've been game mastering for 2 years. You should be proud.
Yeah. I usually, when I'm like running a game for maybe like a teenager that's older than me,
Yeah.
sometimes one of them, like, they want to be in control of like what they want to do, but I have to make sure like I need to make sure that they know that I am the one that is running this. They need to know that whatever they do has to like come by me first.
Yeah.
Because they can't just do whatever.
Cool. So you're just clear about it, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much. Did you have a thought? Or?
Yeah, I was thinking, so most of my experience has come from younger, the sort of younger set, the kind of 5 to 7, 5 to 8 kind of experience. And so that's, there's for me, there is that fantastic idea of the social contract is playing the rules, but then when you get sort of mid into the game, those rules have been long forgotten. They have gone out the window. And so my techniques are, like, one of my techniques is yes and so the question is, can I run around the table and do this thing with my pony because I'm bored? And the answer is yes, and you have to make it part of your character. Like, and so there's an opportunity for me to say yes to these really cool creative ideas where often, kids understand that they've sat at the table too long and they need to run around and blow off steam. And I, as the GM, understand that that's actually a better thing for them to do than to try to set the table and make everyone else crazy. And so my answer is yes, and then you need to do this thing for me. And so for me, that's one of my big tricks. My other big trick is a tactile thing. It's part of the reason that we put companions in Nothing to Evil and encourage people to bring a companion to the table, a thing that they can touch, that they can play with. Because again, there's a sort of sense of energy we're asking them to do, sort of in a very adult thing, to sit and listen, to wait your turn. Like, there's a lot of adult expectations, even in a very simple game. And so this idea that they can have something tactile, and like for kids who really need something tactile, I say, like, bring your companion made out of Legos, and then you can restack, because it's something that doesn't require them to stop paying attention, but it gives them a place to kind of put their energy, and they restack their companion. And the other thing I do is I sort of force or invite them to help me create the world, so that they are engaged and they feel that feels important to them. And so I say, all right, well, we're going to go to this place. What does it look like? So rather than me saying, here's what this looks like, they say, tell me what it looks like. Tell me who's here. And what that does is, as the GM, it allows me to see what they're interested in, but it also means more interaction, that they're getting a chance to tell me more of the story. And to sort of, and it doesn't matter, it's a ghost on 5 legs and it looks like a castle and it's got wings and it flies overhead. I'm like, awesome, like I'll figure out how to do that. Right?
Let's do it.
That's great. That's my trick for adult players too. So.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah.
We had an awesome version of King of Tokyo that my friend's little boy, when he was a lot younger, and we had to play musical chairs while we were playing King of Tokyo. So every time you rolled the dice, you had to run around the table, and then he would yell stop, and then you grab the character that was in front of you. So that was fun.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Confusing, but
I need to try that.
Yeah, that's great.
Fantastic.
So in accordance with our beautiful social contract that we're going to create here today with this panel, I'm going to ask for a quick vote for like the other big topic that we asked all the panelists to weigh in on. So there are 2 things that I was really curious about and that I heard other people curious about. And so one is like, questions about how do you recruit, how do you get kids into gaming the first time? How do you sort of, how do you, like, as a, if you have a game group, how do you advertise to kids and how do you pitch it and how do you make sure that they're feeling safe and supported there, right? And possibly recruiting them into GM. So how do you get kids into gaming? And the other topic I'm curious about is sort of sensitive topics, right, when things come up. So like, violence, right, at certain ages, or with, other people's kids. Like, how do you handle when something that you're not really sure should be in this game right now with these kids when I'm not their parent? How do you deal with that? So can I get a vote? So sensitive topics or recruiting, right? And so let's go for sensitive topics. Okay. And recruiting. Oh, God, you're so all right, lightning round. Can we talk recruiting and then sensitive topics? If you have like your one pitch of advice,
I will be listening to this because my friendly local gaming store are trying desperately to develop family gaming. I mean, for me, because I do steampunk conventions, I kind of have a captive audience. They come to me.
Yeah.
So that's not normally an issue.
Cool.
So I sort of inherited the group from someone else, so I don't know about the initial part. However, I try to pay a lot of attention to the sort of demographics of my group. There was a woman who was GMing that I inherited from, and for unshocking reasons, at least to me, many of the players were young girls. And then as I took over and was GMing, I saw a sort of slow change in that it was more men, and I was very attuned to this. So I have sort of like 6 seats, and people email me and I say like, yes, we have room, no, we don't have room. And I conduct what I call aggressive affirmative action in terms of demographics, right? So like, if I have 6 boys for a while, it's not that low anymore, but if I have 6 boys, and I'm like, oh, I cannot take another boy, I cannot do it, I cannot do it, I cannot do it. If a young girl walks in there, she's in, I do not care, right? Because I am trying to keep it so that RPGs are not only for one kind of person, right? And this was also true about social economics. In my neighborhood, there's like basically the rich kids school where Obama's kids went, right? And then there's like all the other schools where all the other kids go, And for a while, it kind of became like the rich kids, and I was like, nope, no more of this, right? So I think you just have to be like active about it if you're in a place that allows for that. Yeah. And I when I noticed that I needed new girls, I put up a sign that said, "Hi, are you a young adventurer?" And I got a friend of mine to make a picture of a girl wearing, like, with a sword, because there are few of them.
Yes.
A young girl with a sword. Are you an adventurer? Are you a girl or a gender non-conforming child? Do you want to be in a role-playing game? Call this number, right? And I put it up. Do it.
Cool. So James, you started your group, right? So what did you do to get kids into gaming, or possibly your kids?
Well, the group started as a group for anyone, and the grown-ups came first. So my suggestion would be, if you have a friendly local game store, is to try to pitch for some bring your child to game night.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing they're aiming for, because they've got so many people who've grown up gaming who now want to get their kids into it but aren't quite sure how to do it.
Absolutely, and I'm a big believer that there are a lot of games out there that are fantastic games, and we have a whole convention full of them here, but the best way you're going to get kids into gaming, or your own children, is to be passionate and play the games that you're in love with. So if you are a Cypher System fan, play Cypher System with your kids. If you're a D&D fan, play that with your kids. Play something with them and your passion comes out. So if you have a group night at your local game store, at your club, whatever the game you regularly play, bring them in. And that's sort of what we did. It's just, we started with the parents, and then we just started recruiting them younger and bringing them in below that. So.
Cool. I feel like,
This is everything I know about.
Excellent. Perfect. All right. Well, let's have the second lightning round of sensitive topics. So, just any advice you could give for that, like, how do you give that pause? Like, how do you handle it at the table? Are there some things that you just kind of grit and let go, or how do you handle it really sensitively? And specifically, like, I think violence is a big one, right? Because we come from D&D where you bash things, and so there are church groups that have RPG clubs, right? I think Shannon maybe wrote this. So like, how do you, and if kids are playing, sort of amping up the violence in a game where you weren't expecting that to happen, where you weren't really facilitating that, how do you scale it back? How do you talk to them about it?
Just my take is, I think the parents have more trouble with the violence than the kids do about taking it seriously. I play a lot of Dungeon Crawl Classics. There's a lot of monsters dying in that game, and it happens very fast. A lot of player characters die in that game, and it happens very fast. It's never too overly gory, unless it's my kids. We have a little sort of twisted home life, but for the most part, if I'm playing with other kids, it's nothing that's visual. It's in their heads. They don't describe it in too much detail. So I think the games, it's sometimes the parents will look in and then be a little bit cautious. I mean, actually, the presence of magic has brought more concerns than anything else, you know. So, but I've never had an interaction where a kid hasn't had a good time and the parent hasn't been cool with it at some point in time. And I think there's definitely are games in there that are more adult oriented, you know. You probably don't want to play Lamentations of the Flame Princess as written with children. However, I will say the rules for Lamentations of the Flame Princess broken out. They're a really great rule system for younger players. You take the art and swap it. Maybe someone can get to James Ragg and ask him that, because it's really a great system for kids. But you can't bring that book. Do not bring that book to the kids.
Yeah.
Well, like my dad, I really haven't had this happen to me, but for me, I'd like to know my age group. I know this is goes back to what we were saying, but if there's younger kids like 4, 5, or 6, and maybe they're possibly scared of something, I heard this advice a couple days ago. Ask them if they are scared of whatever is going to come up, and if they are, maybe just change what it's called or change what it is a little bit, and then make it so it's not scared. Let's say it's a bee, and maybe someone's scared of bees, so maybe make it a giant teddy bear. You can't be scared of a teddy bear.
I feel like the adult version of that is often the X card, right? And so like there are often, you know, this is not just a kid problem, right? And so if you Google the X card, it's a really cool tool, and it lets you to sit down with strangers and then not have to have a long conversation about what sets you off. It's just if something comes up that you're scared of or you're uncomfortable with, everybody has a little post-it note with an X on it, and they just put it in front of them, and the story shifts away from whatever just happened. And so yeah, just like you said, it happens for adults too.
Well, I'm gonna pick Shanna's game with me because that's one of the
Right,
most things about it.
That's so good.
Yes.
So good.
So you have a No Thank You Evil card. Every player gets one. And the GM gets one. So like if I see a kid who's too scared to play their No Thank You Evil card, because there's a lot of social pressure there, right? And it's like, oh, I don't want to be the one. Like I'll play mine. I'll be like, no Thank You Evil, I'm afraid of that. And I'll turn the tables. And that takes the pressure off of the players, because sometimes it's a really scary thing to do, to be the one who interrupts the flow. So they have the option, but I also try to just keep my eyes open and just see kind of where they're going and if somebody's feeling uncomfortable. And for me, the thing that I run into the most is kids pushing the boundaries. Yeah. What can I say? Can I swear? What's she gonna do? Is that gonna get me in trouble? You know, those kinds of and so you know, you set the boundaries kind of early, and then you just enforce them. And for me, that's a very it's a very respectful enforcement, a reminder that while that might be appropriate in other places, there are younger players or there are players, and just sort of bringing it back really respectfully to the fact that there is this sort of set of expectations at the table. And of course, the worst thing for me is I'm a huge swearer, and so I have to be very, very, very careful, and so I'm super hyper aware of all that other stuff. And so for me, it's really just paying attention to my players, seeing if they feel uncomfortable, and you know, how I describe things becomes how they describe things. So my gore is not gore at all. It's like, we got a Nerf gun and it bops him right in the nose, right? And so then when you talk, the language that I use as the GM leads the language that the kids use. And I think you're sort of starting out, and sure, there's a chance that it's going to escalate, but where you start is kind of where they'll stay. They'll take your cues from you.
I've been, like Carrie, I've been very lucky. I've not had too much of an issue, actually. One of the things with cogs is that if I'm playing it with younger gamers, is because it's quite a cartoony world, you can ramp up that cartooniness, so it is purely cartoon-style violence. So there are no nasty, gory, bloody repercussions from that. And heroes don't really die in cogs and cakes anyway, because they're tough, you know, they bounce back because they're heroes. Yeah. So thankfully, it's never actually been an issue.
So go check out Cogs, Cakes, and Sword Sticks if you don't want to deal with that.
I guess I'll chime in with the my kids are slightly older story again.
Yeah.
So I think that what is a sensitive subject sort of changes over as kids get older, things like that. So with my tweens, we run a little, you know, we play up the fantasy violence, but it's definitely within the realm of fantasy violence, right? And for great fun. But also things like sexuality come up sometimes, and I have had to make sort of calls, sometimes kind of on the spot about that. You know, one kid said that he, you know, early on in my sort of experience of this, one kid said that he, let's see, there are children here. Well, he said he wanted to do something violent to a monster in a private part. And I said, you know what? That's not really the kind of discussion that's not really the kind of game we're gonna play. We're gonna sort of avoid those kinds of topics. How about can you just find some other way to do what you want to do? And maybe I handled it well, maybe I didn't, but I think it worked, and we moved on, right? But on the other hand, like, what if a kid wants to have a crush on an NPC? What if they want to have a crush on another player? What if they want to have a little bit more than a crush on a player because they're like 12, and we worked that out. I'm going to tell you a quick story because it's hilarious. Okay, so you need to go find the wizard in the tower, and you go up there, but before you can get to the tower, there's actually like a wall, and there's guards, and there are 2 women, and their names are Lursa and Bator, and they are reptiles, and they have these big halberds, and they're not going to let you through. And a kid goes like, well, I like flirt with them. I like bat my eyes, and I'm like, and then he like starts to think about it, and he's like, can I get a little help here? Right? And I'm like, you will have to try. I was like, let's see what happens, and then we'll roll for it, right? And so you just gotta take it when you go with it, right? And see what happens. Like, of course, there's gonna be nothing that even gets close to seeming like sexual assault or something like that in any game that I'm running with anybody, but especially with children, right?
Right.
But we let them, I let them play with sexuality and things like that, And I want to echo the thing that sometimes I think it's more the parents who I'm really thinking about in the room. And lastly, one of the things that I do with my group is when I get a new person, I very strongly require a parent to come and sit through, just watch one of the sessions, so that if they realize like, oh, there's tons of fantasy violence here, I'm not into that, they can choose not to come back or something, right? That's never actually happened so far, but they see it, and they see me in a room, they see how I'm interacting with people, and I think that cuts down on a lot of the worry about that.
Awesome, that's all really great advice. So those were I think the major points I wanted to get across. So if you guys are okay with it, why don't we toss it up to the audience? So give it a hand raise, and we'll popcorn it. Yep.
So my eldest is 3, and I'm kind of curious as to one of the things that Shanna mentioned in the beginning was that it's not necessarily a number thing, it's more of a mind space. And like, what kind of questions, or is there a resource that would help figure out where those boxes are?
I highly recommend the sort of standard reading levels, because they aren't about ages. They are about, they're kind of categorized by ages because they kind of had to. But I think, like, when we were thinking about this game in the 3 levels, we were kind of tackling those reading levels, because it does seem like they're not just looking at whether you can read, but they're looking at like how your comprehension of the world around you and your ability to understand, things disappearing or coming back or those kinds of things. And so I think, but I also think that just jumping in there and trying it will teach you a lot about what kids are interested in, what they're able to comprehend. And so if you start talking and it goes off the rails, you can kind of pull back to the place where you're like, okay, well, this is the last place that we were actually connecting about this thing. And often it's a very simple space, and there's something really rewarding to me about, all right, so the first time we played this game, we only got to, you have a pony and you're running around and here's the world and that's cool. And now we're like, oh, look, there's these dice and they have numbers on them. And so for me, I think it's a lot about this kind of give and take, which is really hard when you have 6 players, because you're like give and take, and you're sort of like, all right, where's everybody at?
Yeah.
And so what I do recommend is running one-on-one, like running or 1 and 2, and just kind of feeling out those players and feeling out what they're at.
And if you think about it, children are role-playing all the time. You're just introducing that little bit of structure underneath. So with the example I gave of the little girl who wanted to be Elsa, why not? Why not create their favourite cartoon character with them and do a little story that way? As a one-on-one or just 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Because that's a really nice way of getting them invested, getting them interested, and just steadily introducing that idea of a more structured way of let's pretend.
Great.
What's some advice that you can give for when players have very conflicting views on what they want to do in a particular situation? In one recent game, there was one character that really wanted to rescue the pack of wild wolves, and the other ones that were like, we just want to kill it so we can get past and go to where the treasure is. And there was a big blow up at the table on how to deal with this situation. So any advice on when there's very conflicting views at the table of where they want the story to go?
I'm going to repeat that question real quick for the mic.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you have players at the table who have really conflicting views about what to do in a situation? Like this, we're going to go fight right now. So,
Charge!
Yes, so advice.
If it's my take on it is if it's going to be something that you think is going to disrupt the table, the GM makes the call on what's going to happen, and it's clearly the GM's decision. You know, especially if the age group is in the 11 and below, and you know, because I think as game masters with younger players, we know when this situation is not going to resolve itself. You know, we can see it coming. We can see, especially with split pretty, yeah, we know where it's going to be in 15 minutes. And the discussion is, we put this to bed now, we let it kind of go. And depending on the kids and the time frame, maybe they'll be able to work it out. But if you don't see it happening, you say, look, you know what, let's explore this, but leave a door open for something else. You know what, we're going to go around the dragon, but I promise when we come back, you guys can go and take that dragon and just skin it. You know, you can take it out later, you know? So, but to have some, and by that point they'll forget they get the chance to kill the dragon. That's, you know, when I've come across that, I'll make the call, because at least then I'm the bad guy if I'm the bad guy. What I try to stay away from my games is to have one player make a call or a group of players and they're against each other. Because that's, especially as the kids play a little older, I think in our group, that's happened more frequently as they're trying to the dominant personalities are conflicting.
Any other thoughts, sir?
I have, like I said, I sometimes try to model democracy and do things like voting. I don't do exactly what you do. I often like throw a troll at them. Like, not the most important problem anymore. Occasionally it's like, all right, folks, I'm moving on. But I try to do that infrequently.
Yeah, I think too that, like you were saying, that you can see that coming, and of course, you know, working together in cooperation is always my first sort of like, let's, all right, so you want to kill, let's see how we, and if that is clearly not going to work, then I actually split it, and here's what I mean by that. Like I cloned a thing. Like there's one dragon and one wants to kill and one wants to tame. Now there are two dragons. Ta-da! If there's a wolf pack, now the pack splits in half, and you guys each get to handle that in your own way. And that's sort of my last resort, because really what I want is cooperation, but sometimes that's just not. That's just a meltdown.
that ended up being the solution. There was 3 wolves, 1 was saved.
I wondered if you could give some advice on, like, if you're running for your own kids at home that are different mental boxes, dues, and turn that we have, how to keep a game and kind of scale like the theme and the complexity of it to deal with kids that are kind of distant from each other.
That's a great question. I'm going to repeat it real quick. So how do you handle a table with kids that are in different levels and different mind spaces, right? How do you have party cohesion and have the level of complexity that works for everybody? What are your thoughts? Is that me?
You know, so here's what I do: is I give the older, more advanced players like a secret goal or a bigger story arc. And so, you know, the 5-year-old at the table knows that we're going to go fight the dragon. But the 9 and 10-year-old also know that there's this bigger thing that they are going to get this book that's going to advance their characters or something, right? So they're all at the same goal, but the way in which they're looking at it is more complex. And so for me, that's one of my big ways is, and sometimes it's a secret, and it depends on the dynamic, right? Because, you know, one of the things that for No Think of Evil, we did this thing where like there's a very simple rule set for like the 5 to 7-ish your entire ages, and then more complex for the 7 to 9. But what we found is like the 5-year-olds playing with their 9-year-old sibling, they want the complex rule set because they want it, and so they don't understand it, and so you kind of give it to them, and they grow into it. But I think that there's this sense of like, oh, we're gonna fight the dragon and get a book, and that's sort of this level, and then the second level, the higher level, the more advanced level is like, and here's what the book does, and here's why it's important in the history, and so they have a more complex understanding of kind of the goal and the quest. It's kind of how I do that.
Cool. I was wondering if you.
What we've done is our table right. I mean, it's been 12, 10, and 6 is our table at our home games. And we do play games at home, and it's been 10, 5, and I can't do the math backwards. But a couple years ago, we had a pretty long-running Savage Worlds Last Parsec game going. It was Disney in space. You know, we were like Disney somewhere. And my son, he would get distracted by the TV occasionally, want to walk off. And, you know, I still give him a full character sheet with all this stuff, but I ask him what he wants to do, and the kids would show him what to roll. You know, to help him out with that. Right?
He'd
Say
always
why.
say that he'd have these things, and he really wouldn't. But
Oh yeah, because he was Wally, right?
he's like, I have a wagon.
And he gets space, like floating around. I have a wagon. I'm going to use the wagon, you know, to put the TIE fighter. You know, we mashed everything together. So we you know, in our house, I think our children have grown up watching it. So they want to see at the table. They'll sit there for an hour and a half, but he may not be the most interactive, and that's okay. If he's getting something out of it, I'm okay with that. And you know, the rest of us at the table can kind of continue moving forward.
And encouraging the older sibling to help and support their younger sibling. Because then you're also sneakily training them to be a GM.
Yeah. Excellent. 2 birds, 1 stone. Yay. Shannon. And then
I was just wondering, I don't know if any of you have any experience doing this, but have you guys ever incorporated role-playing into some other group event, as opposed to it being defined as a role-playing game, but like, for instance, I'm a Girl Scout leader, right? Or maybe in like some other session that you, I don't know if you've had experience with teaching art and stuff, if you've kind of incorporated it into even like a larger group setting.
When I was a lecturer, I was a biomedical sciences lecturer for quite a few years. I used to do that with my 17-year-old, so it's a slightly older level. But they were doing biomedical sciences. We had a module that was all about diseases. So I borrowed the role-playing thing that they do with doctor's exams at home, where they have to go in, they have to grill patients to find out what's wrong with them. So I've used it at that sort of an age level. Because I do this, like I said, the steampunk conventions, what I'm doing is part of something way larger. Because there's all the cosplay, there's all the trading, there's all the tea dueling, there's all the other things going on there. So it's all part of an integrated whole, if you like, or semi-integrated whole.
yeah. Do you have any advice specifically for that, or? I mean, you kind of sneakily do it, right? You're like, you know, you're not like we are not playing
No,
it.
that's some ideas going, just because like in the setting of like a Girl Scout program, you know, you've got your badges and stuff that you're working on, so it could be another way to approach doing a particular activity, instead of just saying, okay, well, this is how you do it, now give it a try, right? Oh, okay, now you've got your badge. Like, we could, you know, I'm just thinking,
I mean, it's certainly at home, at least anyway, if you say role-playing to people, they think immediately of 2 things, one of which I'm not mentioning in this room, and the other one is corporate training. So yes, you know, you can put that spin on it for certainly something like that, just to mix things up a bit and make it more interesting for getting the badges, so they're not just, you know, trawling through the internet looking for information. They're actually having to play being people and cooperating and find that information by talking to people, so you're developing their social skills that way and their interaction skills.
Cool. That sounds really good.
Can I just add one real quick? So I do a lot of this in my job at the art museum and art teaching. It's sort of in 2 ways. First of all, we do a lot of object work, which is sort of an improv term for like pretending you have a thing, right? What would it feel like, you know, here's this ancient Chinese vase. What do you think it would feel like if you held it? You can't touch it, please don't touch it. But if you could, how would it feel? And just that sort of thing is kind of a role-playing game activity. And that works with little kids of all ages. And then also things like, you know, if we're trying to introduce a kid to some unknown topic, totally unknown, you know, gosh, kid, what do you know about Chinese Buddhism? You know, like, maybe they know a lot, maybe they don't, you know. So we might give them, like, you know, so the person who made this ancient statue, like, lived alone in a cave way out in the woods. So, like, do you want to, let's pretend that you're a person who lives alone way out in the woods, and this other person's going to interview you about the artwork you made. Really simple, and then it just sort of gets ideas percolating and stuff, and then I add context and add gentle correction and stuff like that, and it works great.
Awesome. Yes.
I'm actually really interested in developing kids as game masters. So my question is kind of two-part. The first being, when they first expressed interest in being game masters, what kinds of advice or resources do you point them towards? And second, we all know that as adults, one of the hardest things for people to learn to develop is how to manage the table and deal with that particularly difficult player. It's particularly painful to watch younger kids do that and go through that. What do you as the adults around there do when you start seeing this session go off the rails a little bit? How do you help them bring it back to make sure everyone is actually looks at the table and the GM doesn't know how?
Awesome. Cool. So if I could say that for the thing, so what resources are there available that you could point kids to when they're trying to learn to GM, or what advice would you give them directly? And then the second is, when you see something going off the rails a little bit, and as a new game master, that happened to me, so how can you, either help them at that time, or sort of, how do you help them? Here's how you could deal with that situation next time, right? So what advice do you have?
So I actually go back to the parent on that question usually in our game club, because the parents will come in, and if a child asks, I want a game master, I want to run a game at home, what can I play? I usually will bring the parent over and see what's their budget. And so that question, I hate to say that, but it's the reality of the hobbies. It can be expensive sometimes, or for a parent, they've told me $20 is expensive sometimes. So a common thing is if there's no budget at all, there are free role-playing games you can find online. Basic Fantasy role-playing game was actually the first game Carrie ever ran. We ran it at our club for a while because it's a free PDF and it's a $4 purchase on Amazon, So that was we have several players that brought that with them. It's free. And the parents start, when the parents want to spend a little more money, well, what's your child interested in, and steer them in that direction towards again it might interest them. And then if there's web tools, if there's design tools, for Dungeon Hall Classics there's a website called purplesorcerer.com. They can print character sheets that helps them for that. There's all sorts of PDFs for Numenera and Strange that our game masters have access to. So we kind of just give them the links they can go out to. But it comes down to the parents. I mean, we have kids that really want to play certain games and their mom and dad will not buy it for them. And they'll come back and say, I still don't have it, what can you give me? I'm like, I don't have the money to just outfit you all with books, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Carrie.
I'm experienced.
But I guess, I saw a Twitter picture of you, you grabbed the Numenera book before we were jamming our game, and you went and read it. Were there any other resources you looked at, or did you just sit down and just read the core book until you felt good about it? Or did you did you go and ask people who ran it for advice, or how did you get prepared?
So we were coming back from vacation, and we were stuck in the car for 3 hours.
Trap them in a car.
So I had the book with me. I grabbed it and I read through all of the rules just to refresh myself. And then I read the main adventure that I was running twice. And then I read over the different key points a couple times. And basically, as soon as I got in the room, I was like, okay, I have these characters. What accents and what all these different things that might make the kids.
Cool, and there are a lot of so you are naturally good at accents. I am not. Mm-hmm. I am terrible at voices, but there are a lot of improv games. I would say those are good resources and they're fun, right? There's the Noisy Person Cards is a new one that's specifically made by RPGers who are improv artists to train you to be better at voices and things. So that'd be great for kids, I think.
There's a game at the moment as well where I can't remember which one it is because it's been a whole slew of little cat box games. It's not an RPG, but you have to sort of do the lucky cat thing to get cards and stuff. Oh, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a hoot. It really is. And again, that's going to encourage children to vocalise and sort of get involved and bring in emotion and things as well.
Cool.
I'm a big fan of co-GMing. I think that setting, and you guys were talking about you just co-GM the other day. So if I'm co-GMing with a child or a teenager, I say, what do you like to do? What are you good at? And I start them there. So they're doing the thing that they feel most comfortable with, whether that's accents or I like math or I want to do this thing. And so basically they have something that makes them feel really solid about the jamming thing, but it's not just them, because that's super scary. And so they get a chance to kind of focus on their thing the first time, kind of see what's happening, see what you're doing, and then as that progresses, you can say, all right, well, do you want to try doing this thing this time? And so as they take on more and more of that role, there's a point where they're like, no, I really want to do the whole thing. And you're like, yes, ta-da! So I think that works for adults too, but I think for kids in particular, like pairing them up with a GM and saying, here's the thing that you're going to do, and that's all you have to worry about, and you're going to co-GM with me. I think it's just such a great way there's a lot of confidence there and a lot of success.
Definitely, I think that touches on the idea that GMing is not like one task. It's a set of a lot of different tasks. And I sometimes will sort of like work on one of those very specific tasks at a time. So sometimes, you know, maybe I'm like running a little late that day and I haven't really put any thought into like what's behind the next door or something. And sometimes I improv it out. But you know, I keep some markers and some extra paper in my bag so that you know, I get there and I'm like, okay, I'm like 30 seconds late. You guys, each of you, here's a piece of paper, here's some markers, design a trap. You know, just think of a trap, and sometime during the dungeon we're in, we'll incorporate it. You know, and that gives them this idea about that sort of thing. We've occasionally drawn maps. We've occasionally done all that different kind of stuff. And then I was so excited the other day. Just totally quirk, like most of the group didn't show up for reasonable reasons, and they were there. And then one of the kids said, "Hey, we could GM." And so these two kids GM'd for me, and they built the most beautiful map of keys and doors and wizards, all of it, and it was right there, and it was great. So it's like a piecemeal process, or can be.
Yeah.
That being said, I have also been like, you want to GM? Great, let's have coffee, talk about it with the kids.
All right.
Just one,
Yeah.
if you want a very inexpensive way to help kids to game Rory story cubes.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. All of you, go buy them.
Yes, do.
I put together a couple weeks ago just a quick adventure with a Numenera group with just the story cubes itself, and just rolled that. Just get your kids a bunch of them, and you know they throw that whenever if they're stuck. What to do? Grab 3 story cubes, throw them, and that might just trigger something.
Yeah.
I believe there's a free PDF from somebody that Fiddleback who created an RPG solely based on those story cubes.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Rory is an absolutely wonderful man. He is so sweet. I mean, it started as a training tool for adults, so developing skills, and it has become such a wonderful resource for pretty much everybody. And they are such a lovely company, so please do support them.
Cool. So I'm so sorry. I think I should probably let these guys do their outros so you can harass them more because they're so full of delicious nuggets of information.
Before you do that,
Yes,
have
yes.
you collected the tickets?
Yes.
Good. Just wanted
Right?
to
If any of you still have your ticket, there's the yellow envelope back there. Thank you for reminding me of that. Appreciate it. So let people know, you know, give your plug and where people can find you if you want them to find you. You don't have to. You can hide
What's
back
your
next to your
address again?
What was that? Yeah. So you can find us at livingforcrits4.com. You can find us on you look up Living for Crits on YouTube, works that way too, and at I Live for Crits. And if you see in my post, if you see plus and G plus Carrie W, that's her.
She posts a lot of artwork and it's awesome.
She's
A
done
lot of it's RPG
Yeah,
related.
she's been doing for the last 3 adventures I put online on my blog. She's done the cover art for them. So if you see a centagoat, a 6-legged goat, that was hers.
Yes.
I will be at the Monty Cook Games booth for the next 2 days. We're at, I can't read, 1935. And we're doing little 15, 20-minute demos around a table with lots of cool monster pillows. So feel free to come by and have a demo of No Thank You Evil. We have a few, so we did this as a Kickstarter, and we had a deluxe version that had like a cloth map and some really cool stickers and all that kind of stuff. We have a few of those left. They're a little bit more expensive than the box set, but if that's something you're interested in, we have those as well.
The thing I want you to do is go to Facebook and type in RPGs for Kids, and then click on it, and then join.
4 number or 4?
For the spelled out word. And it is there. I also have a business card I can give you if you want my personal contact.
Cogs and Cakes is published via Modifius as a third-party thing. I have some cards here if people would like them. If you follow the link on the back, you can get the entire first chapter for free, which is the very basic rules. It's the pick up and play. There's everything there that you need to run simple games. If you want to do the character creation, that's a little bit more, you need the rest of it. But we still have a few copies left on the stand. I'm on tomorrow morning. If you come by and I'm there, I can do 10 minutes. We can do characters in 10 minutes, just to run you through the process. It's that quick and that simple. So if anybody wants one of these, please grab me on the way out, and I will be more than happy to bend your ears tomorrow if you come by and see me.
Excellent. I mean, it has a lot of adventures in the back too, so a lot of the book is like...
And it ramps up, so you start with a very simple one, then there's a slightly more complicated one, and then there's a much more complicated one, which is more for older children, because it's a murder mystery. It sort of like takes you on and develops things as you go through.
Thank you guys so much. Please give a round of applause.
And now run to the next thing.
Yes. Thank you so much. That was really, really